Hey, what's up, Fight Family? This is Contemplate Boxing. So, of course, just finished watching Devin Haney defend his WBC title against Jojo Diaz. Devin Haney won a decision against Jojo Diaz. For myself, I scored the fight 8 rounds to 4 for Haney. Diaz, he did have some moments within the fight. There were times in which Diaz, he was able to actually get inside, get a lot of good work done, some shots to the body, some shots upstairs with the straight left hand. Overall, I was a little bit disappointed with some of the bouts of inactivity within the fight that Diaz would seem to have. I remember right after round 11, I think it was, before going into the final round, round 12, I believe I overheard Diaz corner ask Diaz, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And that was kind of in the back of my mind throughout much of this fight. As much as Joseph Diaz had spoken about, how much dog he has, Joseph Diaz seemed to spend a lot of times kind of waiting for the perfect moment. Not so much for the perfect shot, but he seemed to be waiting for perfect moments and perfect opportunities. There were times in which Devin Haney, he was being active. He was using his jab. He was throwing the straight right hand down to the body. But there were a lot of times in which Diaz seemed to be able to pick off some of these shots with that high guard that he was using, pick off some shots on his gloves, pick off some shots, with his elbow and forearms, and he was able to get in, throw the straight left down the pipe, get some other shots in, and then he would become a little bit more active. But those moments seemed few and far in between. Now, with that said, in the last and final round, in round 12, after his corner asked him, hey, what are you waiting for? It seemed in that round that Joseph Diaz finally showed the urgency that I had actually kind of expected him to show much earlier in the fight, or even throughout the fight. I do believe that Diaz did win the 12th and final round. He came out and he showed that urgency. He then fought like he really did want to be, WBC champion. It didn't feel like, or it didn't appear to me, throughout the majority of the rest of the fight, that he really fought with that urgency and that desperation to be a champion, which did disappoint me a little bit. As hungry as Joseph Diaz is, and as hungry as, he portrayed himself to be in the lead up to this fight, I did expect more urgency from him throughout the night. Not so much like for every round, because, that's an exhausting fight to conduct. So that's an exhausting strategy. But I did expect him to show more of that sort of activity than he actually did. He did seem to wait too much. He did seem, to kind of, again, be waiting for those moments, waiting for the right moment. Not so much the right punch, because Joseph Diaz is not, a huge puncher. He's definitely not a one-punch type of artist. But he did seem to, again, be waiting for the right moment, or waiting for the right conditions to go ahead and let his hands go. For Devin Haney, he fought a good fight. Again, he did seem to have a little bit of trouble landing cleanly, especially much earlier in the fight. He was throwing his shots. A lot of them were not landing clean. Joseph Diaz did appear to pick off a lot of these shots, forearm, elbows. Devin Haney did start to make some adjustment, did start going around the guard. But Devin Haney, he fought the fight, used the tactics that he needed to do in order to go ahead and win the decision. Now, with that said, unfortunately, Devin Haney fighting in Las Vegas, we saw, the crowd was booing him. This was not a Haney crowd. This definitely was not a pro-Haney crowd. For Devin Haney, and I could be wrong on this. I was talking to one of my friends earlier. Devin Haney seems like an individual that may care a little bit too much about what the public perception or the fan perception is of him. Some of the commentators were talking earlier about how Devin Haney seemed to be bothered about individuals believing that he doesn't have punching power. I don't think that's something that Devin Haney really needs to be concerned about. I don't think that's something that he should be dwelling on. As a matter of fact, they started to bring up the fact, we all saw the videos after Devin Haney had fought Jorge Linares, how he asked Linares about his punching power, you know, and I really think that, a lot of fan comments, a lot of analyst comments and critic comments, do get to him. Because I do think that Devin Haney sees that. And so when he was in the fight against Jorge Linares, he was trying to get him out of there. Of course, he didn't get him out of there. When he was in the fight with Yorkis Gamboa, he wanted to get him out of there. He said that he was going to get him out of there, but he didn't get him out of there. In this fight, I believe Bill Haney in certain interviews, and Devin Haney as well, believe that they were going to get Joseph Diaz out of there, that they were going to really put a beating on him. And that's not what happened. And I think each time that happens, when Bill Haney and Devin Haney are trying to change that public perception about Devin not being a big puncher, of him, having feather hands or pillow fists, and I don't think that he does. But I think, to some degree, maybe they begin to try a little bit harder to try to dissuade the general boxing public of that opinion of him. And I think for Devin Haney, the more he tries to do that, he will more and more, little by little, put himself in a position to where he's making himself more vulnerable in certain fights, to where he may end up making a mistake that'll cost him, the fighter, that'll cost him everything. I think there does come a point when the public perception of a fighter gets to a certain point, that the fighter has to say, hey, I can't worry about that. I just need to fight whatever fight that I need to fight in order to get the next W and move on to the next stage. A lot of us didn't like the way that Bernard Hopkins fought, especially later in his career. A lot of people didn't care to see Bernard Hopkins, fight the way that he fought post Trinidad, when he was getting older and he became more tactical. None of us really wanted to see that, or most of us didn't want to see that. But Bernard Hopkins couldn't worry about that. He just had to win the fight so that he could get to the next stage, so he can get to the next level, so that he can get to the next opportunity and the next payday. And I think Devin Haney probably needs to adopt a similar or the same mindset. Look, you're champion. You're at a real good point, but you still got to get to the next point. You can't be worried about, what I'm saying, or you can't be worried about what other channels are saying, or what fans are saying, or what critics and analysts are saying. Whether you're a boring fighter or whether you have punching power, win the fight. If that means that you're not taking risk in the fight, just to get the W, hey, then that's what you're going to have to do if that's what it takes to reach the next point. We want you to take risk in regards to not avoiding risky opponents. Don't not take risk when it comes to your opponent selection. Take those risks. The guys that can potentially beat you, fight them, because that's going to show your greatness. But when you get into these fights, I think Devin Haney is worried too much about pleasing the crowd, and that only goes so far. That only goes so far, because for certain fighters like Devin Haney, what I think he has to realize is that if he takes the risk in fight of trying to please the crowd and he ends up paying the price for that, well, the opportunities are going to stop coming for him, because already as is, the fan perception is against him. So for Devin Haney, I think that's something that he's going to want to keep in mind. Otherwise, Devin Haney, he fought a good fight. I do want to see Haney, and I'm probably going to be one of the very few people with this particular opinion. For Devin Haney, for his particular style, and for what he's trying to actually do with his career, I want to see Haney become more tactical. I want to see him take less risk in the ring. I want him to fight the risky opponents, but I want him to start taking less risk even if that means that he solidifies that fan opinion of him being boring because he just needs to get the W. You know, he's not a big puncher. He's not going to be a big puncher. He's not an exciting fighter. He's not going to be an exciting fighter. And so I don't think that that's something that he needs to pursue any longer. For Joseph Diaz, going forward, you know, Joseph Diaz, you know, I like him. But going forward, I want him to display more of that dog that he was talking about in the lead up to this fight. Whoever he fights next, you know, and the rest of the opponents that he fights going forward, I want him to show more of what he showed in round 12 and more in what he showed in the 4 rounds that I scored for him in this fight, you know, instead of what he showed in the 8 rounds that I didn't score for him in this fight, you know, where he was kind of waiting for the perfect moment, for the perfect opportunity, you know, to really let his hands go. He was a lot more hesitant than what I really wanted to see from him. And that cost him the fight tonight, you know. But, I mean, you know, I like both fighters, and I hope to see more of both of them. For both men, congratulations on a great fight. You know, fight family, I hope that y'all enjoyed this fight. You know, let me know if you agree with me or disagree with me. These are just my first initial thoughts. But anyhow, please, you know, hit either the thumbs up or the thumbs down on the video. If you hit the thumbs down, you know, let me know what you disagree with. You know, I always enjoy just having conversation in regards to the fight game. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead, call it a night. You know, been doing a little bit of traveling, did a little bit of camping with the family that we came back from today. So came back from camping, got cleaned up, went pretty much straight into watching the fight. And so I'm pretty exhausted. But anyhow, hey, fight family, y'all take it easy in the meantime. Peace. God bless.